I got this Christmas card, and the Christmas card includes 1,000 naira, which you can use to buy area bufa on the outside stage.
Oh, where's that from?
Nigeria.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
The home of 419. And
Yeah.
419. So anyway, but I'm glad. Let us know when we're live, because we don't want to say anything online that would be.
Yeah, I'll make sure that you guys know. Don't worry about it. I would never.
Hot mic. Hot mic.
Check, test.
You
Testing.
you
One,
don't
two,
want
test,
anyone.
one, two.
And above all, do not send Josh any confidential information. No.
Yeah, don't
Bad.
don't send me anything ever. Oh my god, so many people are just sending me things that I shouldn't have, and they shouldn't be sending me. They need to stop. Stop doing that.
Stop doing this to yourselves, guys.
I'm getting a bit of an echo from somebody. Is that me?
Is that me?
It might be you.
How do I get it? Because my headphones are here.
I have no idea. I can just hear us talking. It's very slight. It's really quiet. It's
Solo?
gone. No, it's
Oh.
gone. Taken care of. Problem solved. That's why we do these openings. That's why we test things out before we actually go live. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because otherwise it would not be professional.
Yeah, that would be terrible. We can't have non-professionalism on this channel. No.
I mean, we don't pay you enough to be professional.
Hey! Hi, everybody! Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the Unnamed Tavern. We're here for a microbrew. With us today, we have Chris Shelton, and we're going to be talking about politics and cults. Chris is kind of like a bit of an expert in this field and this kind of thing. And so I'm really excited. I'm also really, really excited because he's actually never spoken on like a stream with Landon or Manya yet. And this is going to be a hell of a good time. I know he's spoken to Dapper before, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it this time. But he's stuck with us. We're all trapped here.
Right.
Yeah, you're stuck with us.
How you doing, Chris?
I'm good. I'm getting feedback though, which is I'm hearing everything twice.
Oh no,
I'm
do
hearing
you
us
have
on
us
live
You're hearing us on
in
live?
real time,
okay,
and then I'm hearing us on the live stream for some reason.
Let me see. Do you got let me ask if live chat's got live chat, you got a delay? Do you hear an echo? Let's find out there. Do you have any other tab opened?
I have not anymore.
There you go. Is it fixed?
There it is. Okay.
Yeah,
Didn't
we
realize
found
I didn't
it.
have the YouTube
I-
stream open at the
I
same
do
time.
that.
My bad.
I do that all the time, specifically this chat right here, because I don't want like stuff that is like held for review stuff showing up. I have a whole other incognito tab opened just to get this, and if I don't put something at the beginning of my streams, I can't mute it ahead of time, so I have to go back and mute it while we're live, and sometimes I'm like, where's that coming from? I did that thing. It was me. I did the thing. Problem solved. What's that on your
Thank you.
desk?
Sorry about that.
What you got on your desk there?
This here? You mean my book? This is my book. This is okay. So I grew up in Scientology, got out of Scientology, wrote a book about Scientology, and that's what this book is. So if you want to know about Scientology, buy my book. It's on Amazon.
I will make sure a link to that goes into the description as soon as we're done here. It might be happen while we're live. Go check it out. I'm gonna put it on my Amazon wish list.
Yeah, it's not my story. It's an actual breakdown of the cult. It's not just my, what happened to me. So,
what do you have against the letters Y and Z?
A to X.
I mean, you're missing
right.
the bit of the end of the alphabet.
Well, it's Xenu, see? It's not the Xnu, it's Xenu. So it is.
Oh, it goes to Z.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's the play on words.
Well played.
Right? It is Xenu.
Clever.
Well played.
Clever.
Yeah.
I love it. So today we're talking about kind of how politics and sort of how cult mentality and kind of culty tricks have started being used a lot in politics, particularly in America, but certainly not the only people that are guilty of that. And these kind of like tribal ideas that grow from being relatively healthy into growing into incredibly toxic or potentially even dangerous ideologies, or sort of like these. I mean, people think that Trump is the second coming of Jesus, which is ridiculous. There are people who actually think this. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manya. I'm going to pin your comment. Link to Chris's book. Pinned.
Yay.
There we go.
Thank you.
It's the top. It's at the top. Right there. You can see it. It's right there. It's right at the top. So, I mean, you've been studying this for a while, right? Like, how long have you been studying cults exactly? 'Cause it's been some time.
I got out of I escaped Scientology in 2013, and basically since then.
Oh, okay.
So
a while.
That's a decade.
Yeah, so it's 10 years.
Decade,
yeah, and then I got really deep into trying to figure out what the hell happened to me, right? And then it was then figuring out how does this work, and then realizing all cults work the same way, that it's not just Scientology that's really bad, like they all follow the same playbook. And then seeing how it applies in other areas, and propaganda and manipulation and PR and all that kind of stuff. And then and then I kind of focused on the subject of coercive control and went and got a degree in that, so that I kind of really know what I'm talking about with that. And that's where I'm coming from. Yeah, it's kind of like coercive control, you know, isolation, manipulation, control, the stuff domestic abusers do and cult leaders do and gangs do, all that. It's all the same kind of behavior. And so that's kind of how I approach this stuff.
Kind of all plucks on the same string of trying to manipulate people into doing what you say without question, or with questions that only agree.
That's right. That's exactly right. And manipulating people in such a way that the cleverest forms of manipulation are the ones where you don't realize you're being manipulated, of course. And and that's what a lot of cult recruitment is about. And then a lot of the retention techniques they use to keep you there are an awful lot of blaming you and making you feel responsible. It's not the cult, it's you. You know, it's not the multi-level marketing scheme, it's you. And you're the problem. And then, you know, so even if you leave, you're so stuck into this idea that it's all on you that you never look to the actual source of the problem, or, you know, the responsible party for the abuse. And that's one of the ways they get you, you know, that kind of thing. And all of these tricks and all of the manipulations apply in the political sphere and the religious sphere. They really apply everywhere, but they are so obvious and prominent in religion and in politics that it's easy to talk about it. It's easier to talk about it in those areas.
So, Chris, you know, that there's people, I don't agree with them, there's a common belief that cult is it's only a religion, that you can't have a cult without some religious structure. And yet we were talking about political cults. So how do political cults, are they technically cults? And if so, are they like a religious cult, but are there differences? Tell us about that.
Okay, cool. So a cult, or a destructive cult, as I like to use, because if you just take the word cult, it doesn't necessarily imply or mean that there's abusive or destructive or, you know, really bad stuff happening there. You could have a cult of personality built around somebody who's not mean or destructive or awful, right? And he's not leading everybody over the cliff. Or you could have a cult film or a cult classic, you know, this kind of thing. So the word cult all by itself doesn't necessarily imply destructive manipulation or abuse. But if we say destructive cult, now we're focusing a bit more on that. And there are certain characteristics that we use to talk about groups that are destructive cults, and the belief set or what the ideas are that the group has almost nothing to do with that. It's what they do that makes it a cult, not what they believe. And that's a really important distinction.
Wow.
Because it does remove that argument that it's all religious. It's not. Nexium, for example, Keith Raniere's whole thing had nothing to do with religion at all, but it was absolutely a destructive cult. So when you have any group that is sort of meeting these characteristics, right? I've actually pulled up my The only other tab I have open is my website with these characteristics. But for example, the group, it displays excessively zealous and unquestioning commitment to its leader and his beliefs, and regards his belief system, ideology, and practices as the truth with a capital T. It's like everything in a cult is dialed up to 11. It's a good way of kind of showing the extremism, right? There's no other way to think about it. It's this way.
But isn't also the case
Shesh, this does not definitely remind us of what's been happening in the last few 2 to 3 months around an individual who set up a campaign against another certain individual.
The thing is there's sometimes you'll find that toxic or fan bases will revolve around an individual, or a fan base will get so big around an individual that it'll start forming pockets. And then people within those pockets will start arguing with each other, yada, 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 and they'll kind of form their own. And so you start to wonder, is the person this is built around actually the cult leader, or is it individuals within those pockets that are do as I tell you? Because now it's not about so let's take Taylor Swift for an example, right? Is Taylor Swift directing people or making people do? Is she manipulating anybody? It doesn't seem to be, to me. But does that mean that there aren't pockets of incredibly destructive people that may have one or two figureheads of those fan base groups that very well might be doing that? I mean, sure.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Yeah. Fans in it. Fan actually is short for fanatic, by the way. And right. Fans can become toxic all on their own. But when we talk about a group and start labeling it as a destructive cult, one of the characteristics of this is that there is a codependent relationship between the leader and the followers. The leader needs the followers personally at a psychological level, and the followers need the leader. And
it's that narcissistic supply. In some
exactly.
cases.
It's not just fandom. It's not just fandom.
And there tends to be a sort of monolithic belief set or set of rules or guidelines that everybody is kind of told they have to follow, or they're not in the group, or they're not part of the in group. So when you have factioning and different people with different opinions and ideas that are wildly different, you're probably not looking at a cult situation. You're looking at something different.
But Chris, isn't there a case of a group, trait where what people do is they try to outdo each other in being more loyal? I'm more hardcore. I'm more of a in, because they're trying to compete on whatever the destructive cult thing is to be even more stuff.
Absolutely,
you're
that's
not
a reflection
true.
of that.
Yeah, but
so I think that's a reflection of that codependency. Right, they have to be the best, the brightest for the cult leader. Right,
and the group does it to themselves, saying you're not a true believer, you're not a true blah blah blah, because look what I do. I amp it up.
That's right. That's right. Now that can happen just among the fan base, I suppose. But if the cult leader, or the leader is the celebrity figure, the politician, the ideologue, whoever, isn't doing something to tamp that down and stop it, they're probably wanting that to happen, and or their hands are off the wheel, they're not paying attention.
There's also,
but generally speaking, they rile this kind of behavior up.
Definitely rile the behavior up. They don't question, and if anybody questions, they also go to the side of the victimhood, or being passive aggressively being overly nice. I'm just trying to help you here. We're just trying to be nice to each other. Why are you questioning us or criticizing us? What's wrong with you? And then they make you feel guilty for speaking up. Very straightforward pattern. It's so obvious. But yeah. A lot of times people think that it's only restricted to religion for some reason, that it can't go, or saying around, and you guys saying that around personalities or certain individuals. And Shesh also brought up a very interesting point that we have been witness to for last 4 to 5 months, if I'm not wrong, about not the main person themselves being, the, what do you say, dictating what
Instigator.
should happen, but the individuals around them, dictating what should happen and how everyone should behave.
Well, I
or
mean, there's
what
a
questions
difference
they can
to
ask,
bring it into
et cetera, et cetera, et
politics,
cetera.
right? There's a really big.
Mhm.
There are definitely like, if you're gonna go into like particularly American politics, there's a difference between like how Joe Biden handles himself publicly and the way Trump handles himself publicly, whether you agree with their actual policies or not. Because like
Correct.
Democrats, it's not like there aren't Democrats that are like fall into like toxic nonsense, right? It's just a matter of, is Joe Biden responsible for that, whereas MAGA is very much something that is like encapsulates Trump's behavior.
Right. That's right. And see, in MAGA as a whole, you can't really look at it and go, well, the whole thing is just one big great cult. If you want to vote for Trump, you're in a cult. It's not. It's not that black and white, right? That, in fact, if you thought it was, that's cult thinking, right? Because it's
right, you're stuck in group
extremely black and white. It's my way or the highway, and there is no in between. And the less in between there is, the more cult-like it is. Because let's remember, all of this is on a spectrum. All of it. There's no such thing as, on switch, off switch. It's a cult. It's not a cult. There's shades of gray in all of this, and that's one of the things that can make people's heads explode, because you got to think about this. It's not just a simple thing.
How do you feel
But
about
politics is where we see.
But Chris,
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, there's like 3 questions. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Brandon.
go for it, guys.
So you qualified by talking about destructive cult.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask you, what do you mean by destructive? And for example, someone might say the Democratic Party is destructive. Therefore, being a Democrat is a destructive cult. Just like someone might say the Republicans are bad. Therefore, so how do you? And then someone who is in it, let's say is in a destructive cult, might say, no. We have the truth. It's the enemy over there. They're the ones that are destructive. We're just trying to defend. So
Kids,
who gets
children.
to decide it's destructive?
Think of the children.
Well, that's where you have
I mean,
relative values, right?
Yes.
Right. That's where relative values come in. You can argue about it all day long, right? It's not just because somebody, I mean, let me go over some of the other characteristics a little bit, because when I said earlier, right, the group displays excessively zealous and unquestioning commitment to its leader. Those 2 words, excessively zealous and unquestioning, are important. Those are the key words of that sentence, right? You can't question what's going on. You are a zealot about what's going on. You're so in that you couldn't even contemplate being out. You couldn't even contemplate some other way that the world could be than this way. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. If that's your view of your ideology, you got some issues, because the more zealous and unquestioning you get about anything, the less you're going to be able to think critically about it. And critical thinking is the antithesis of this, right?
I think we're seeing a lot of that when it comes to like the way Biden's been handling Israel and Palestine. There's a lot of people who are like, no, we don't question Biden because we have to vote for him, period, end of sentence, doesn't matter what he does. Yeah. Whereas, like, that's not relevant to criticizing him on this topic, right? They're tying together being critical of him to making people want to vote for Republicans, which is just, that's just not the case. They're separate
not
things.
At all. You should... No matter, I guess the bottom line with this particular first point is, no matter what group you're part of or what cause you're following or advocating for or whatever, you should always be able to question what's going on. You should always be able to critically think about what's going on. And there's a psychological sort of effect here where... What's that?
You shouldn't be shat on for asking questions.
No, you shouldn't. And you shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. Now, there is something wrong with I'm just asking questions when in fact you're not. You're just
how
gonna pop up.
There's an old school thing we used to talk about back in the day, and I feel like I should bring it back. It was called the 5 C's, and one of them was cookies. How are you approaching the conversation? If you're approaching the conversation earnestly and like in a pleasant manner, you're gonna catch more flies. Even if you suspect that people are being dishonest, you can still enter the conversation from an take your opinion, shelve it for a second, and say, okay, can you explain to me this particular thing in a non-confrontational way, which will stop people from immediately getting defensive and shitting all over you for just asking questions.
That's right. That's right.
So
one of the hallmarks of cultic thinking is, well, I don't need to talk to the other side. I don't need to hear the other side because I already know. I already know everything they think. I already know everything they're going to say. That's your black and white. I'm right.
Prejudge
anybody
the outsider
who doesn't think this way is totally wrong. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one of them.
Chris, what question I have is, how many points do you have, and would it be useful for you to just quickly mention the points so that we know the larger context?
There's a few of them here.
Oh, yeah, we'll stop interrupting and asking questions and let him present the whole thing.
Let me go through some of these, right?
Quickly list off the points rather than going into detail.
Yeah, let me go through a few. And let me credit Dr. Yanya Lalich and Dr. Michael Angione, who came up with this checklist. This is not mine. I've been using this from almost day one, and it has always served me well in analyzing or taking a look at a group. There are other models that people use. People have mentioned the BITE model in the comments. That's one. There are lots of models. Models are just ways of thinking about and framing behavior and activity, right? It's no big deal. BITE model is perfectly fine. But I prefer this list because it gets a little bit more specific about certain things. For example, the third point, or the second point, is questioning, doubt, and dissent are discouraged or even punished, right? You start questioning things and people are punishing you, something's wrong. Now, this is an interesting one, and it even applies in politics. Mind-altering practices, such as meditation, chanting, speaking in tongues, denunciation sessions, and debilitating work routines are used in excess and serve to suppress doubts about the group and its leader. One of the things that goes along with mind-altering practices is the use of what's called a thought-stopping cliche or a thought-terminating cliche. It's a saying or a phrase or a mantra, and once you say it, the thinking's over. And almost anything can serve as a thought-stopping cliche for a cult group. For example, if you're on the GOP side and somebody's saying something that's causing you to have issues or questions or problems, you can just say, well, they're just a Democrat. They're just a libtard. Boom, done. It's finished. You don't have to think about what they're saying anymore because this cliche comes locking into place, and you don't have to think about it. And that allows you to hold on to your fragile beliefs and not have to be questioned or challenged about them. Okay, the leadership, this is usually pretty clear, again, especially in politics. The leadership dictates, sometimes in great detail, how members should think, act, and feel. For example, members must get permission to date, change jobs, marry, or leaders prescribe what types of clothes to wear, where to live, whether or not to have children, how to discipline children, and so forth. We see this rampantly through Christian nationalism, for example, and evangelicism. But we also see this I could tell you about an acting class where the acting coach, the guy who headed up the class, he was a cult leader. And he treated his whole class like a little cult. And if you didn't follow his method, if you dared bring anything else in, it was punishment time. So it can apply anywhere. Now, this is where we see it come out so clearly in politics. This is one of the bigger ones, is the group is elitist, claiming a special exalted status for itself, its leaders, and members. For example, the leader is considered the Messiah, a special being, etc. or the leader is on a special mission to save humanity. We've been seeing a lot of this out of the Trump camp. And you mentioned the Jesus thing. That's not a joke. There are people who are that far down the rabbit hole with this guy. And, you know, I say what you will about politics and belief and taking a side. Not once in my entire life have I ever considered that a politician was Jesus. That is what we call extremism.
New? Is this something new, or has this been happening in the past? Like,
there have been political cults.
Status.
There have been political cults in the past that deify their leaders or can glorify their leaders or idolize their leaders. There was a guy named Lyndon LaRouche. That was a bit of a political cult, right?
Yeah.
My college professor actually was a survivor of a far left political cult. He was like full blown communism kind of thing. So it can, you know, so it can happen. And
in other
and
countries,
them
like people like
people
like Father
North Korea.
If I may just,
Lag.
North Korea is a great example. North Korea is a great example.
Thank you.
I guess, you know, putting the king at the same par, a king of a country at the same par as like God, you know, saying that the king is a representation of God on the earth. So we have seen that in like royalty and stuff, right? But in politics has like it been done the same way. But glorifying a leader is one thing, but have they been glorified to say that they are representing God on this earth or something like that? That's what my question.
When you take a politician and raise them to the level of supernatural being, something's wrong, right? I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Biden. I don't care if you think Mr. Rogers is a supernatural being. It's just wrong. You just shouldn't be doing that.
Mr.
Right?
Rogers. Go ahead, Landon.
Mr.
What do you
Rogers,
got for
right?
us?
North Korea is a great example, though, of so many of these cult mechanisms used in an ideological sense. And the Kim family has actually raised that to a level of a science in terms of running their country, right?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple other points. The group has a polarized us versus them mentality, which may cause conflict with the wider society, right? And that's that whole black and white thinking thing, right? But it's not just black and white thinking, it's us versus them. And this is really crucial. This is almost universal from one to another in terms of cults, is we're the good guys. We're the guys in the white hat. Everybody wants to think of themselves that way, but these groups really go to town on it. And if you're not part of our group, you're a bad person. You're an evil person. You're an immoral person. You're not blessed. You're not touched, whatever it is, right? And they'll use any number of words. You're an ignorant person. You're a stupid person. I mean, whatever it is. But it's we're good, you're bad. And the reason we're good is because this is the position we hold, or this is the belief we have, or this is the leader we follow. That's what makes us good. Not what we do, not what we say. It's just the fact that we're here. We're the good guys, and they're all the bad guys.
It's so
by the virtue of just being on the right side, just by like, or being born into the right religion, right? Or in the right country, which is the right religion, if I may dare say. Yeah,
that's right.
And also the people the people sometimes use code words in meeting somebody to try to say, "Are you a true believer? Or are you one of the evil ones?" Right? They have certain phrases that they say. Do you believe? Are you a member, or are you one of the out, right? That black and white thing includes sort of a training on how to detect another member.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you got it. You have all your in-group language and that sort of thing. There's other things we could go over, which we probably won't get into today, in terms of methods of control. And loading the language is one of the most powerful ones. This is the Orwellian slant on things, right? When freedom equals slavery, that kind of thing. They will take words and they will redefine them for their own specialized use. And so that's your keywords and code words and that kind of thing.
My favorite one recently of that has been CRT. Right?
Don't get me started, girl. Don't. No.
I'm just gonna chuck that bomb in there. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm not going near that one. Not touching that.
Sorry, go on. Landon, go ahead.
Any other things? Any other points, Chris? You want to?
Yeah. There's a few more. Because this is how we really look at it, right? When we're the people who actually work in this field, who pay attention to this, who when we talk to each other about it, these are the sort of some of the characteristics we look for. And it's not an easy thing. It's not like you just go, oh, they're just a cult because they're doing one thing. That's hardly ever can you tell just from one thing. Now, the leader is not accountable to any authorities. Right? Yep. Right. Anybody who tries to take the leader to task for any reason, and they immediately start experiencing what we call Darvo.
Hey.
What is Darvo?
Darvo is deny, attack, and reverse the victim and the offender. You're saying I did all these things. You're the one who did all these things. I'm the real victim here. You're the one who's hurting me. I didn't hurt anybody. Right? This is classic narcissistic behavior. It's called Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. I'm just going to say outright, Trump manifests this 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's all he does. Is Darvo.
Almost
Darvo,
all
Darvo,
of his
Darvo,
stuff
Darvo,
is
Darvo.
no you.
Exactly. And he doesn't even do a very subtle job of it, right? Some people get really good and subtle about it, and they can be quite passive aggressive, and it can be quite effective. But when it's blatant in your face, right? But the followers, the codependent followers of such a leader, will mirror that behavior, and
they're already in,
along with it.
They're already in. They're already not questioning. So Darvo becomes a lot easier when you've already manipulated somebody into thinking that they're better than you, and their opinion and what they say matters more than yours does. That's
right. That's exactly right. So they're all too willing to go along with the cult leader's Darvo and do the same thing, right? Oh, Donald Trump never broke a law once. What are you talking about, right? Everything has to be rationalized. Everything has to be minimized.
Biden, though.
Right.
I was legitimately pulled into a thread where somebody was arguing about whether, this is just the other day, I got tagged in a thread because I'm an artist. I do art on a tablet, because somebody was making this insane claim that there was no difference between writing on a tablet or a screen versus writing on paper. And I'm like, there are so many accessibility things. There are so many different types of tablets. There's a big difference between a drawing tablet and the thing that you sign when the post guy comes by. What are you even talking about? And these people were so deep into defending Trump about signatures on things that they were like, no, a pencil's the same thing. And I'm like, are you, what is this? And you'll argue about the most asinine things because you're so deep. You can't be wrong about anything. Just basic facts are just gone out the window.
That's right. Yeah, accountability is something that is anathema, or is, sort of very much resisted by cult leaders. They are never responsible. They're never accountable. It's never their fault. It's never the group's fault. Ever. They never did anything wrong. And of course, anybody who's watched any media about how, or been on Twitter and seen how Scientology responds to things, sees a perfect example of that, 7 days a week, right? Nobody was ever harmed by Scientology. It's all us dirty liars, right? Now, here's another one that's really super important. Is basically summarizes down to the ends justify the means, right? And this may result in members participating in behaviors or activities they would have considered reprehensible or unethical before joining the group. But after being part of it for a while, suddenly these things change.
Rules
and
for thee, but not for me.
Exactly. And this is where the shunning and the disconnection and the actually all the way out to violence are all justified or all rationalized, because the what's happening internally is that as a result of being part of the group and the unquestioning loyalty to the group and the rules and strictures of the group demand certain behaviors, and those behaviors, because you want to follow that way and be that way, and you have to keep doing that, you end up rewriting your moral foundations, right? You literally, your values change as a result.
You sell out. You've essentially sold out your principles at that point, because the ends justify the means. You're willing to sell yourself and whatever you believe in out for whatever you've been manipulated into. As it, again, this is as much as, like, I think Manya mentioned, like, oh, that thing, that's so obvious when somebody does that. It's like, yeah, it is if you look at each thing individually, but when you start lumping them all together and you're in it, it's a lot harder to tell one from the other when you're 6 feet underground.
That's right. No one ever, and I mean ever, joins a cult.
Right.
They never imagine that's what they're doing. And the process of changing moral foundations and changing, principles and behavior like that takes time. It's never it's hardly ever, I should say, is it an overnight thing, where you're suddenly going along one way and suddenly you're completely the opposite, right? It's usually the boiling frog in the water thing. It's a slow burn. And so you don't even see how you're changing, because it's so gradual. And of course I can, speak from experience on that, and having helped people out of it, right? Because it's also a slow change coming out too. There's a lot to undo when you come out of one of these things.
I mean, one of the things that I see on a regular basis is that from people who have left Mormonism in particular, I see talking about this a lot, is a lot of time they mention that the things that they were taught and the things that they grow up with never really go away, and they have to check themselves on a regular basis about things all the time to be like, wait a minute, is that me or is that what I learned?
Especially because their foundation, social foundation, their social structures and economic structures may be bound up in the cult. It's very hard for them to maybe reject a fundamental principle and retain a lot of the other parts of them, especially if they're shunned
over a long time,
cast out.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. In fact, that brings up a good point, because cults are all about the social hierarchy and network that you're part of. A cult, the word cult comes from the word culture. That's its root idea. And that's society. That's social. That's a social thing. You don't have a cult of one. So the social values and the social pressures are a big part of recruitment and retention.
Right.
Okay, a couple more here, and then we can move on, I suppose.
Open the floor,
ends justify the means. The leadership. Okay, now this is something that the leadership will do, and they will overtly do this. Now, it might be with subtle means, but they will always do this. And this is something that is an undeniable characteristic of these groups, is that the leadership induces feelings of shame or guilt in order to influence or control members. Often this is done, as we were just saying, often this is done through peer pressure and subtle forms of persuasion, right? Oh, you want a better world, don't you? All the classic crap, right? All the peer pressure crap that we've all known about since high school.
These ones are kind of used by a lot of like multi-marketing schemes also. And also nowadays charities have also started doing that. Some like representatives who call you like from charities, doing that the phone collection drive that they do.
Your controlling aunt does it to you to guilt trip you into coming to Thanksgiving.
But there's also the notion. If they're
like,
trying to,
I think so. I was in Auckland when there's a delay, man. I'm so sorry. Welcome to the Unnamed Tavern, the microbrew.
Money's on the other side of the planet.
Once. Yeah, that also. I'm like, wait. So there was this once, like one of my colleagues invited me to one of these seminars, and three very enthusiastic individuals, on the stage. Do you want to change your life? Do you want to be successful? Do you want to really know what it means to be successful? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, what's going on here? And then they're like, oh, if you want to join the journey, $800 membership, you're not allowed to go out till they're finished. You're not allowed to have water till they're finished. So and you're not allowed to carry around mobile phones. You have to put them on silent and off. Even if you're going to the toilet, you're not supposed to search or Google anything. So, and I was just sitting there, I'm just like, this is not there's something wrong here. My brain was screaming like screaming at me, get out of here. But I got peer pressured into signing up for their $800 first year membership. And when I reached home, I was just like, what the fuck did I just do right now? So I had to call their customer services, and I told them off. I'm like, you used peer pressure tactics on me to provide you with my debit card and sign up for that membership. I need my money back now, or else I'm going to the consumer tribunal. In New Zealand, they're very strong consumer protection laws. As soon as I said I'm going to the consumer tribunal, they were like, we will refund your money, and I got all my money back, luckily. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, social pressure, there's a number of things that influence us to do things, and one of the most powerful is social pressure. We want, when it's one against many, we're outnumbered, and that's what love bombing is about, by the way. The whole manipulative kindness thing. That's a kind of social pressure.
Trolling. Make that happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they can use guilt. They can use admiration. They can use other emotional triggers. Whatever's going to work on the person, that's what they're going to use to get you.
Yeah.
Right? Or retain you, keep you once they do have you, because people will have doubts.
Oh.
And and they didn't do a very good job, it sounds, of departure deterring you, as I say, as we call it, right? they did not deter your departure. So, okay, let's see here. So the shame and guilt's a real thing. Subservience to the leader requires members to cut ties with family and friends and radically alter the personal goals and activities they had before joining the group. This is a real key one, because what you see with cults, real destructive cults, you see personality changes. You see significant personality changes in the membership. And who was Ashley Babbitt, the one who got shot at Jan 6?
Oh, yeah, yep.
Right? She was a soccer mom. She was an Air Force vet. She was, if I remember right, she was a regular sort of person. Yes. And she went down that Trump rabbit hole and that, QAnon rabbit hole, and she became a different person. And so the rewriting of the moral foundations is part of that, right? The person's ideas of what's right and wrong and good and bad, basically, is a tremendously powerful way of changing personality, but then also getting people to accept, we're the special, holy, exalted ones, and everybody else doesn't know the truth, and we do, and that's why we're special, and that's why we have to act to, do all these things that are actually quite horrible. So it's all part of that package.
I think it's important for people listening to this list to not think, well, of course, I would never do that sort of thing. This is only weak people that get involved in a cult, right? Yeah. It's also, I think, important to say, I'm not a conservative, I'm not a MAGA person, I'm not a Republican, so I'm not part of a political cult. That is also, I think these destructive cults often try to tell their members, you're not in a cult. It's those people. They're the true cult. You're part of the truth. But the notion that it can't happen to you is, I think, a fallacy that lures people into being actually trapped.
Mm-hmm. There's something that's really interesting, particularly when you're talking about cults and political stuff. The Wikipedia for Ashley Babbitt says killing of Ashley Babbitt and frames her as a martyr. That's the Wikipedia article about her. Mm. That's the Wikipedia. Well, I linked it in the chat so you guys could see. Yeah. That is like that is just not what happened. That is just not the way things are. But it's that reframing to just call it the killing of instead of calling things what they were, right? And so that's part of that. I think what you brought up earlier was the manipulation of language.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, language is everything with this. So is context, right? Context is king in all disputes like this, and
that's one of the C's.
And the thing about cults is they hate context. They love generalized rules and statements, right? And the farther away they can get from specifics and from details, the better. That's just something you see with these groups. Okay, we're almost to the end because I'm not going over all of them here, right? I mean, preoccupied with making money. Okay, so what? Now, the last couple here. Members are expected to devote inordinate amounts of time to the group and group-related activities. They're actually expected to. I mean, often we see a lot of dedication on their part, but that's kind of conditioned into them, right? You've got to save the world, so you've got to be here for 12 hours. You've got to be here for 16 hours. You've got to be full-time, or you're just not really dedicated to the cause, are you? Right? And we would actually hear this. Okay, I'll share this with you from within Scientology. We heard this from Tom Cruise directly during one of his videos. I think it was the turtleneck video, the old black turtleneck video.
Yeah.
He
Classic.
says in that video, before my head hits the pillow at night, I ask myself, have I done everything I can for this group? Have I done everything for Scientology before I'm even allowing myself to go to sleep?
Yep.
I hated that line, even when I was in, because it meant so many sleepless nights for us.
That's a big red flag for me. That's the first red flag for me. I'm just like, you're asking me to forgo sleep. I love my sleep. I'm never giving up on that. Fuck you.
Yeah, no, cults hate sleep because food deprivation and sleep deprivation make you much more susceptible to being controlled.
Yep.
So it's so much easier. They can also induce a psychotic break, but hey, them's the breaks, right? Okay. Members are encouraged or required to live and or socialize only with other group members. This starts out at the beginning stages with sort of discouragement, sort of frowny faces, sort of, oh, your best friend's not a group member, huh? Okay. Little subtle micro judgments to start with. And it builds
I cannot tell
over
you
time.
The number of times I was told growing up to try, like how hard my mom tried, bless her heart, throwing her under the bus. How hard she tried to get me to make friends with the other church kids, and I just failed at it.
Oh no!
Luckily for me, I just failed.
You're a goblin, so what do you expect?
That's right. Well, they're trying to get you into that culture. Right? Want to scoop you up into that culture.
It's literally called church culture.
And they're trying to avoid you associating with people that might get you involved in critical thinking.
And how much they're always like, go out and bring your friends to church.
And in fact, if somebody is asking real questions, they're shunned, and the members are told not to associate with this disbeliever, this infidel, this apostate, this.
That's right. And the final one, and the one that we see a lot of with some of the MAGA especially, the most loyal members, the quote-unquote true believers, feel there can be no life outside the context of the group. They believe there's no other way to be, and often fear reprisals to themselves or others if they leave or even consider leaving the group. Right, which is one of the ways that they keep themselves in, is every time they do start having questions or doubts, up, out come the thought-stopping cliches, out come the mantras, and they keep themselves in because it has to, and what that has to do with psychologically is it has to do with identity, right? They start making the cult group the whole of their identity. And they wear the clothes, and they go to the rallies, and they memorize the speeches, and it's all about this. And then come the lawn signs and the posters and the billboards and everything else, right? It's all about their identity as a group member. And the more extreme your identity is as a group member, well, the less, again, that you're going to be able to critically think about the topic. And that's the real threat, is it's carving out, it's whittling away a person's ability to think outside of that paradigm, to the point where they eventually get to a place where they can't.
Yeah. It's whittling away at who you are as a person, right? Katina in the chat makes a really good point that says it's so familiar and they don't even mean harm. And I think that's one of the most dangerous parts about it, is that the immediate people around you within that group are not really trying to hurt you. They mean well, and they believe that they mean well, and they believe that they're trying to help you. And it's really, really, really hard to get away from that kind of thing when the overarching cult is the problem, not inherently the people that are right beside you, even though they're enabling you and pushing you in bad directions.
Sure.
Yeah, that's right.
So Chris,
so those are the points.
So Chris, yeah, I say thank you very much, because people can go to mncriticalthinking.com and click on what is a cult to see this thing. And you've listed a number of points, but one thing I think is important to probably to see is that you do not have to have every one of those points in order to be a destructive cult.
No, not at all. Not at all. We're looking for a majority, and we're looking for the behavior, and we're looking for the psychological effects. And
extreme and the majority.
Yeah. And it's usually pretty obvious. This is not rocket science. This stuff is really pretty easy to see for the most part, especially if you're familiar with the person involved before they were involved with the group, and you can see the change.
As long as you're outside of it. Yeah. There's that actually ties into a question from the chat as well, from Sar, that says they would ask if it's possible to have a partial cult that has some of these things but not all of them, or is this the case where you can have enough parts to be a cult? And I think ultimately what is the deciding factor is the effect that it's having on its members.
That's exactly right. What we hear, and part of what's on my website here about this, right, is this list may help you determine if there is cause for concern. Bear in mind that this list is not meant to be a cult scale or a definitive checklist to determine if a specific group is a cult. This is not so much a diagnostic instrument as it is an analytical tool, right? It's something to think with. It's not something to go, oh, check, 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 boom, cult. You know, because interpretation is everything. And also the way we approach this stuff and the attitudes and biases we bring to it have a lot to do with that too. This is why I constantly am rolling my eyes at people making broad generalities about how all religion is a cult, all governments are cults, the military is a cult. I mean, come on, you know, it's not like that. You know, so that's why we try to analyze it a little bit more closely.
But Chris, you know, you've also added, I think, an important qualifier of destructive, right? But let me ask you this: destructive to whom or to what? What is the destructive effect on?
Well, you have psychological. Yeah, you have psychological harm or trauma in terms of actual traumatic episodes or experiences, punishments, disciplinary actions, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, in Scientology, I was physically punished, not just spiritually or mentally disciplined. So you will have assaults, you will have degrading punishments, you'll have social punishments. And you, with MLMs and often with many, many cults, you will have destruction of a social network, right? You'll be encouraged to bring all your friends and family in, and then it blows everything up and you lose relationships. You can lose your family even because of this. The disconnection and shunning can become a thing where you lose contact with family and friends or business associates. I've seen businesses broken up in Scientology or in other groups because of this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly we all, you know, sort of joke about Thanksgiving and Christmas and how, you know, it's like battle of the ideologues over the Thanksgiving turkey, right? That's destructive behavior. That's causing the family conflict that was never necessary in the first place. And of course, there is the financial destruction that's wrought. People are often bankrupted by these groups, you know, outright financially ruined.
Yeah.
So those are some examples of what we call or what we look at in terms of destructiveness.
question from the chat. Vagary is asking, what is Mr. Shelton's opinion of government efforts to break up cults, like for instance, legal actions against Jehovah's Witnesses in parts of Europe?
Yeah, that where they can regulate illegal behavior or criminal behavior or overtly destructive physical behavior, that kind of thing, they absolutely should. That's what the law is for, is to protect its citizens regardless of their beliefs, so that so that no citizens can, persecute or coercively control others. This is now law in the UK, by the way. We have coercive control on the books over there when it comes to domestic violence situations. And this is defined as a repeating pattern of abusive, manipulative, isolationist behavior, where you're literally taking over the person's life and denying them their human rights. And if you can prove that in a domestic situation with a repeating pattern of that behavior, you've got a case of coercive control on your hands.
So basically,
That's what cults do too.
You're taking pre-existing laws and finding ways to apply them or expand those laws in a way that they're going to be applicable to cult groups. Because I know, particularly Scientology likes to ride that line of, well, this is like a freedom of religion type thing.
That's right. And people should have freedom. That's right. People need to have freedom of religion. There's never any argument from anybody, who can see this clearly. There's no argument against freedom of religion. You can't regulate what's going on in a person's head. This is why I kind of harp on this point that it's not about the beliefs. I don't care what you believe. I really don't. It's not how crazy your beliefs are. It's not whether you think Xenu's coming, and it's not whether you think Comet Hale-Bopp is coming or not with Heaven's Gate, for example. It's the mass suicide. That's the crazy part. That's the part that we just go crazy.
The extreme.
Now, obviously, belief informs action, and it's not like they're completely disrelated. But I have to stress, when we analyze these groups, when we talk about this kind of activity, we're looking at real world actions, not trying to regulate belief or what a person can or should believe. And so when a government can step in to regulate destructive behavior or stop MLMs from scamming people with, a system that is designed to make people lose, that's provable. You can show that. The numbers are there. That's the kind of thing government should be regulating. Banning, by the way, just outright, is almost always a universally bad idea. I don't support governments doing that, because that's trying to regulate belief and thinking. And
that's the wrong kind of regulation.
Exactly.
We're back to the only Sith deal in absolutes, and you have to leave that room for people to explore and develop culture. And sometimes there are growing pains to that. And sometimes things happen that aren't okay, but you grow out of that as you learn and experience and grow as even an individual.
And also, you don't want to outright ban them, because then they go into the shadows. They find more avenues, like dark internet is one of the avenues, where they operate, and you don't know actually the extent of the harm that then they're actually causing. So you need them out in the open, and them to be confident enough in the open. And then it's actually beneficial for you, because you are sharpening your skills again, what's coming next. You need to be ready intellectually, and emotionally to handle these things, because with the information, the connection growing globally day by day, like how much information we can share, and then misinformation becoming part of that data, you have to be ready to sift through this, because if you're not ready to sift through this, you are giving the other side the ammo to draw more people. And victimhood is a very attractive thing nowadays. Like, I'm a victim. We are victims. We are the chosen ones. Very, very attractive. So you gotta stay there and stay strong and be ready to counter these things.
That's right. And just as a point, this is not to say, by the way, that any belief set is above ridicule or criticism. That's not the point at all. I have done whole videos taking down the whole Xenu bullshit. I mean, it is bullshit, and it's provable bullshit, because Hubbard makes specific claims in that dogma, right, that you can point to and go, that never happened. It's impossible that you're saying that is true, because it can't be true. So you can do that all day long. Just don't imagine that you're going to convert cult members doing that, because that's not how it works.
Right.
Yeah, I think I think I say so. The other thing that's important to say that even though we, this panel, we might, poke at the people involved in the MAGA cult, right, of stuff. Just because you're a Trump supporter doesn't mean you're a MAGA cult person. On the other hand, there are plenty of people that aid and abet the cult, even though they may not be cult members, right? So there are people such as senators who recognize if they tick off the cult member, they might lose 10 to 20% of their voter base, which means the difference between winning and losing. And so they might be in a society where they have to play along or at least acquiesce to the cult, even though they're not part of the cult. To maintain their position in the society.
Yeah. You're talking about opportunists and enablers. And opportunists and enablers are not generally cult members because they're kind of outside and aware of what's going on and aware of what they're doing as in terms of hopping on the bandwagon or enabling that bandwagon like a Trump, right? In order for their own self-aggrandizement, power, influence, or whatever. And the thing that always amazed me, it shouldn't have, but it still does, is watching over the years, all the way back to 2015, when he first announced, watching the number of people who took on the role of opportunist or enabler to get near or close to Trump. And every single one of them thought that they were somehow going to be immune to his rage or his, his base when they inevitably split from it or were busted for their criminal activities.
Lindsey Graham comes to mind as somebody who was like, if we put Trump into power, we're going to destroy the Republican Party. And now he's bootlicking and has been for a while.
That's right.
And there are members that
Ted Cruz,
right.
Yep.
They might
his wife, right? Like, he's great. He's wonderful.
Yep.
Because they might be privately abhor the leader, but they are complicit in the process, right? And so it in a case like the MAGA group, because right now the balance of power between the Democrat and Republican parties is so narrow, these cults exert real power because they may be the difference between winning and losing. And so someone who's not part of the MAGA cult or whatever equivalent is on the other side, will acquiesce to that because they need they're in a society where they need it.
That's exactly right. And I know we've already lost like half the viewership in terms of potential viewership because we've been going on and on about MAGA, but let me say,
fight me.
Right. And because I have to be honest about this, right? You get the same extremism on the left and you get the same cult behavior on the extreme left. And it's just the fact that it's because it's human beings and human beings do what they do.
If you don't believe Chris, go and try and criticize any like of the louder groups about their tactics in how they're approaching something, and you see how that goes for you. It won't be good. It will be bad.
We had that example last night. Yep. It was glorious.
Okay. That's right.
So if you
Tucker Carlson is probably Czar here's comment. Tucker Carlson is probably one of the single best examples ever of an enabler, right? Because we do know from his private texts that he's not on board. Sean Hannity as well, although lesser so because he's so stupidly right.
Someone like a Mitch Romney spent a lot of his time in the Senate, not being, you're privately being critical of Trump, but enabling that process. He, and he didn't do the thing of saying, "I'm going to dissociate with stuff and be independent," until he decided he's not running for election again, and therefore MAGA didn't mean anything. That becomes that's part of the process. And someone could be part of a company town, but not part of the company. And in order to live, they've got to at least play along with it.
That's right. And you're right, MAGA is 20%. I get that.
There is one thing that I also notice happens a lot, and it is this idea, if you find yourself stuck in this, and this is one thing that I'd be like, this should be a red flag in your own brain, like this is something you ought to look out for. If you start criticizing a group, or particularly an individual, to the point where everything that individual does is wrong, about everything all the time, no matter what it is, you're the problem. You're doing the bad thing. Stop bad. No, bunk. Stop that.
That's right. In fact, that's demonstrative of what I mentioned earlier about how there's no nuance.
Right.
Cults are all about no nuance. It's this way. Period.
Yep.
That's actually one of the most obvious things that you're looking at a cult. And I don't care if it has to do with Hasbro toys. You know, it could be anything.
Your D&D cults.
You know, that's right. I hate to say it, but any group can devolve into this.
Yes. And like you don't have to necessarily get national attention to be considered a cult, or you don't have to be super big or have a super large number to be considered destructive. Sorry, go ahead, Landon.
That's right.
On the other hand, I think there's another point. You don't have to be small to be a cult. And I think one of the largest cults in the world is the cult of Xi Jinping. The leader of the Communist Party
that's correct.
has turned himself into a cult member. The CCP is a cult enabler. Xi Jinping thought is very much there. The us, them sort of thing. He has reached Mao Zedong level cult figureship, and it is unacceptable in that society to even be mildly critical of Xi Jinping. And he has enormous number of followers, right? If you get attacked by the 50 Cent Army, if you dare criticize or be critical of that, you get labeled a racist. You're labeled a racist, anti-Chinese, and so forth. If you dare go up against a Xi Jinping cult, and I think, sorry, go ahead. It is. So that's an example of a very powerful, very large. On the other hand, like the Falun Gong is a cult. And the two, CCP and Falun Gong, are at each other. One's small, one's large, but they both have destructive.
Well, I was going to bring that up because sometimes you have cult versus cult.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And if you have lived anywhere where that what is that Shang the Fang, what's that dancing troupe that goes around?
Oh yes. I don't remember. Yeah.
That's the front group for Falun Gong. And Falun Gong is a cult against China's cult. I mean, you can have that happen too. Shen Yu, that's it. Yeah. Shen Yu. And in Iran, there is a cult that fights the theocracy. So and they're all in, right? You're either with us or against us, kind of thing. So
one cult or the other cult. That's all you get.
That's right.
There's also,
so it's not even about values. It's not even about values you can agree with. That's not the point, right? That's why I try to separate beliefs. It's how far do they take it, and it can get pretty crazy. Yeah.
So these are examples that the Chinese Communist Party and the cult of Xi Jinping is an example of a non-religious, non-right-wing cult that is very destructive and very large
and political. There's a side note, because that affects the world. That's a world issue at that point, because we have to interact with China. There's no getting around that. We can't just pretend they don't exist.
Oh no,
but
not at all.
We should probably look to start wrapping up because we are at the hour mark. I think our best point to wrap up on is that Chris, do you have any advice to make sure like personal practices that you can apply to, like the people at home can apply to themselves to help make sure they don't get caught in stuff like this? Because I mean, me and Manya have been watching this kind of crap. Like a lot of the stuff that I cover on this channel tends to have like a toxic fan base that will do the kind of stuff you've been describing. Now, do any of them fall into the cult like a cult? I don't know. I'd have to analyze it a little bit more closely to tell.
One does, actually.
But
One does.
It's
Actually,
easy
two.
to. I can think of 3 off the top of my head.
And-
But it doesn't matter who they are. The point is like, it's so easy. And I wouldn't want anybody to kind of fall into that thing even just watching me at all, because I think this is something YouTubers abuse the shit out of as well. But Do you have advice for people, like mental exercises or practices that people could do to like just at home be like, hey, I need to think about this for a minute?
Well, absolutely. Just general pieces of advice, not even exercises as such, although you could practice it, because it is, critical thinking is a discipline, right? And it's not going to always save you. The frontal lobes is not what this is all about. It's actually about emotional needs and our emotional responses to things. That's what gets people off to the extremist races. And so what you want to do is work on your emotional intelligence, work on your emotional awareness, and work on your critical thinking in terms of personal stuff. Those are very broad statements, but that's because on purpose, because that's going to mean different things for different people, but all in the direction of trying to engage your frontal lobes more often. But the biggest thing for me over the years that really made sense to me and helped me rein myself in, because I came out of a cult that I was part of for decades, and you don't just turn the light switch off and now you're not a cult member anymore. It just doesn't work like that. It takes time to let go of the extremist habits of thinking you have. So maybe you come out of a cult and you're not hardcore on Scientology anymore, but then I'm suddenly hardcore left. Hardcore, right? It's all about the left,
It's
right?
like
And for a few years, that's kind of where I lived.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the extreme stays the same. You just change position.
Exactly, because it's a habit that you form in your mind that extremist thinking is how you're supposed to think. And you gotta, and that's the part that we now politically in America certainly, and the UK I believe as well, have riled ourselves up for so many years that it's become a habit. And we got to pull the reins back on that, meaning stop dedicating yourself 100% to anything. There is no such thing as absolute truth and ultimate authority, and your side is good and on the right side of history, and everybody else getting it wrong. That's not how any of this works. So
even if you think God is, we're all still humans.
Exactly, and you can be wrong, and the three hardest words for anybody to say are "I don't know." Those are hard words for people to say,
but they're very powerful if you would say them with conviction. Because
and if
you
can
become
believe them,
become a hard to reach as a from a cult point of view. By the way, Chris, I was actually asked privately to ask you because they knew you were on. The person wanted to ask about the Scientology episode on South Park.
Oh, sure. What do you want to know about
it? They wanted to know. I think what they said is it an accurate portrayal? And what is Scientology's reaction to it?
Okay, yes, it was an accurate portrayal. However, something very few people seem to understand, because it wasn't in the South Park episode, is only about 5% of Scientologists ever learn about Xenu. About 5%. The whole time I was in,
that would have been
I never
such
learned
a
about
funny.
it.
That would have been such a funny joke. Like they're all so like the kids find out about Scientology and they're asking all these Scientologists about Xenu and none of them know what they're talking about.
Exactly, because they don't. So what it should have said along the bottom is 5% of Scientologists really believe this. Because that's the only ones who get there, right? Scientologists have a lot of crazy beliefs. Xenu is actually, even at that level that they're giving you, even at the confidential level that they're exposing, Xenu is the least important part of what you learn on that level, believe it or not. There's a whole other thing going on there with the spiritual
buy his
component.
book. It might tell you.
Yeah, it's all in here, by the way. I break it all down. But anyway, so the South Park episode is accurate, and the recruitment methods they showed in there are accurate. As far as I know, Tom Cruise's behavior is pretty accurate. But he's not a closet. I will say he's not a closet homosexual. That's for sure. He's as straight as they get.
But fudge packing is a more of a generic term, not a.
Yeah. They're an incredibly homophobic religion. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. But the question they also asked is, what was Scientology's reaction to that South Park episode?
Okay. So Chef had to quit, right? They pressured Isaac Hayes into quitting, and because he didn't want to. Isaac Hayes was like, no, I'm not quitting. And they're like, yeah, you are. And they made him. So that
sad.
happened. Yeah, it kind of was. And then he died a few years later. And he was a hardcore Scientologist, so he went along with it.
Well, he's made his choices.
They tried to fair game Trey and Matt, and that didn't quite work out so good. I don't know super specifics on that. I just know that the church tried behind the scenes to exert influence to punish Trey and Matt for that episode, but didn't really go much of anywhere. Trey and Matt are kind of Teflon in many ways, mostly because they just don't give a shit.
Yes, fair enough.
And
I don't know it. I don't care.
I always love them for that.
It's a real powerful defense. Also, the fact that Trey and Matt were, one of their goals when they would come to Silicon Graphics and talk was, we would like the show ending with getting past censors but being canceled because of what we get past the censors. They want to go out in a blaze of glory. And I suspect secretly they were hoping that Scientology might be able to terminate South Park, and they would be terminated, and that would be
they're trying to make themselves into martyrs about the topic.
Well, they don't care.
Yeah.
They're
the penguin. Come at me, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But is it
they are a nature. That is true. The other thing about it, in terms of fallout from that, as far as Scientology goes, is it was actually quite interesting, because one of the myths connected with that whole Xenu thing is, if you find out about it before you're ready for it, and it starts kind of processing in your head spiritually, you're going to die. You're going to get pneumonia and you're going to die in a couple days, right? It's like that sacred. Well, nobody died. Nobody died.
Oh, wow.
Nobody died.
Thought.
And so, a little bit of nice debunking of L. Ron Hubbard's bullshit there for people who were paying attention.
Well, congratulations. Thank you so much for your work, and so much for being here and answering our questions and hosting us and having a good old time. Thanks, Manya, Landon. Thank you to me, Chesh, for producing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chesh.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Welcome back from your vacation.
Yeah,
I'm
supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be here right now, but I had
welcome
already
back.
scheduled this, and I liked.
Manya.
Right?
I'm on vacation too. I've actually taken December off.
Hey,
But we set this
thank
up
you so
months
much.
ago, so.
Oh, thank you
Go and
so
check out your
much.
book. So
Yes.
Chris, where is your book available?
Oh, okay.
Amazon.
So
Hold your book.
Amazon. Okay, so you can get a printed copy of this book. You can get an audio copy, or you can get an ebook copy. I did them all on Amazon. Scientology A to Xenu.
The link
And then
is
you can
down
check out
below
my,
in the description. The website
and you can
links
check out my
down below
website.
in the description.
Beautiful.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a hell of a good time. I hope you guys all had fun. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope you guys maybe go back and watch some of either Chris's vlogs if you want to deep dive more into any particular topic that he brought up today, because he did go through a big list. So if you want more of that, or you found one that you were like, oh, I want to know more about that particular one, go check out his videos on this. As well as feel free to go peruse my channel and check out the stuff we've talked about there and see if anything that you heard here applies. And leave me a comment. Leave me a comment if you're like, hey, that's a culty thing. I'd love to know. Thank you so much for joining us. This is.
Thank you.
Landon,
I
we're
think
trying to
this is
leave.
your Dumb Peck Friday. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm kidding. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, the Dumb Peck Friday stuff would be a good one. He's got a sorry hat on. This has been great. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everyone.